Salut, bonjour tout le monde, I'm Gunny, and it seems that this godforsaken country is apparently getting elections finally. Surprisingly enough, not even triggered by Trudeau's towel boy. So let's have a little look on the two main competitors. We have on the one hand Carney, which is the liberal quote-unquote prime minister who was put in place by less than 160,000 Canadians, so not even 1% of the population. And let's not mince words here. He is a weft stooge and a piece of shit who has made a career out of essentially shorting your economies. That's what he is. He forms the same school as Soros, Schwab, and all of the other ones. And he's also one of the guys who have been, quote-unquote, advising Trudeau's policy for a very long time. He is also one of the crazies who wants to have a green economy by putting taxes on everything we require, like steel and oil. Now, from the CPC, we have Pierre Poilievre, and you think I might be singing his praises, but you could not be further from the truth. My biggest issue with the guy is that he is a 20-year politician who has never had a real job in his life, and is mostly known to, give a few poignant answers to Trudeau in the House of Commons. That's kind of about it. Now, you might say he has barely become the leader of the CPC. That is correct. That being said, to win the leadership race, he had made a number of really big promises, such as cutting taxes, completely defunding the CBC, reducing or halting, I should say, the mass immigration. There was a lot of promises that he made in order to win this particular race. Cards on table, I am also a member of the CPC. I literally got a membership because I wanted to vote in that particular race. He was not my first pick, he was the second. My first pick was Leslyn Lewis, and the big reason for that is she seemed, she was a lawyer, she had an actual job outside of politics, and she is also, the only one that was on stage that actually looked to me like she had actual values and not poor numbers. Now, my big problem with Poilievre is that he has walked back a lot of things already. First things first, the CBC. Instead of defunding, it's only about reducing the budget, which I don't see why the fuck you would do that, because the CBC is never going to give you good publicity anyway, so the second and probably the biggest point for many people on the right, including myself, which might be weird coming from a migrant now Canadian, he's not talking about halting the mass migration. He is talking about bringing 250,000 people per year. Why? It is still 1 million people per term, and it's going to be way more than we can absorb. Far more. And one of the biggest problems is regarding the green economy. As you might probably know, Carney and all of his ilk are very much in line with the Paris Accord and installing a green carbon neutral economy, blah blah blah. The big problem is, and take it from an engineer, that's entirely bullshit. There is absolutely no problem with the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. If anything, we could do with a lot more, because, that's plant food. So he's not going out of the green economy or Paris Accord. He's walked back the CBC. He's walked back the really big one, the carbon tax. And to top it all off, the LPC has been cutting the grass from under his feet, because Carney is now also talking about cutting carbon taxes or doing a number of things that the CPC was also saying in terms of tax cuts. And that's probably why the polls have inverted considerably in favor of the Liberals. Now, you might be saying that the polls are bullshit, that it is the same thing from Trump versus Kamala. Let me remind you a very important point. Trump versus Kamala didn't start with 20 points in favor of the Republicans. The statistical anomaly is this 20-point lead, not that they are now neck and neck. And when you are looking at Polymarket, which in my opinion is a far superior predictor than any polls that made by an actual polling agency, the Liberals have been sitting at a 55 to 60% chance of getting Carney as Prime Minister. So how do we remedy the situation? Well, first off, fire every single advisor at the CPC. I do not know who or how they came to the idea that being Liberals light were going to get them the victory. First off, Scheer, the leader with the charisma of a doormat, got punted with another Liberal majority. Thanks. Then we had the Tool, which had a little bit more charisma than the Scheer, but he was also an absurd authoritarian. Remember, the debate is overline on the on climate change during the presentation of the program, which also was essentially a carbon copy of what the Liberals were doing. And so now with Poilievre, we are getting a backtracking on almost all of the big points, and well, that's essentially trying to make him more palatable to the Liberals. I don't fucking know why. So ironically, the solution is, well, fairly simple. The big problem that the LPC has, and I don't know why nobody at the CPC realized that, is that they have shifted very, very far to the left, and so on the field of values, there are a number of things that they absolutely cannot touch or go against. They can steal everything economically from the CPC, like saying that they're going to build pipeline, that sort of things, but, you know, like the railroad to go around Lac Mégantic after the train carrying oil exploded, you know, hundreds of people wounded, billions in damage. They have spent billions to, quote-unquote, build to build rails to reroute out of city center. Well, that's a problem. For 12.5 kilometers and billions invested, not a single millimeter of rail has been built. They're going to do the exact same thing with pipelines. They're going to say, oh, we need studies, we need acceptance, blah, blah, blah. With Carney, it will never get built, ever. So, if you are talking about on the field of values, the CPC must hit them hard on that front. We must build build the pipelines with a program that actually prevents, with a program that would actually prevent natives, ecologists, and so on and so forth to block the process, or even to force Quebec to allow the pipeline to go through whether they like it or not. They could also go after German affirming care. No. Go after gender affirming care for kids, because this is completely insane. They could go after the pride parades that are showing every single kink or parading naked in the streets. They could go against Islamists. They could actually go after immigration, saying that there's a major moratorium on all immigration coming from certain countries, like say Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, because we have a bunch of Khalistani terrorists as well going into Canada. That's fucking great. This is all a bunch of values that I believe are going to be, that is a bunch of values that the LPC is incapable of holding because of who the voter base are, but that a number of people that are on the left or undecided will absolutely get along with. So, considering the LPC can steal and grift on every single economic values, it means that the CPC, ironically, must stop being a bunch of whiny bitches and get values themselves. So, one last point that I want to make regarding Carney and Alberta. He's already said that he wants to have his emission cap, which in reality would be a production cap on Alberta oil, which is, well, quite literally the lifeline of Canada. Alberta is one of the only provinces to be quote-unquote profitable. In my opinion, there's still way too much bureaucracy and inefficiencies everywhere. But Alberta is literally funding Quebec, Ontario, and a bunch of other places at the tune of 20 billion per year, I believe, at minimum. So the big issue that we're going to encounter now is that if Carney actually puts an emission cap, if he gets in, that is, that means that Alberta will essentially be suffering from, well, the same kind of supply management cartel bullshit that is happening in Quebec. So you cannot have any more milk, poultry, or eggs after a certain quota to keep the prices high, which means that we would be doing the same thing for gas, which would probably skyrocket the price of a liter to $3 per liter, when it's currently $1.30 on the Costco right now. So if that would be happening, and that's something that Danielle Smith has also been talking about in her meeting with Carney, which, let's be completely honest, she had a list of things that she does not want to hear about. It's not actually going to do anything because Alberta in the Westminster system is essentially incapable of doing anything. If you get, I'll make another video about that, but to give you an idea, Alberta is probably the most conservative province in Canada, but because we do not actually elect our senators, they are named by the Prime Minister, it means that Liberals are representing Alberta in the Senate. That's great. So if Carney comes in, quite frankly, he's probably going to force Smith to do a couple of things. First off, she's going to actually be forced, she will be, yeah, that's a correct word, she will be forced to actually do what she promised during her leadership race, meaning that she will have to have a Alberta police force and an Alberta tax office. There will be no way of getting around that if you want to resist Carney. But also the third and most important point is Alberta independence. I'll make another video about that, but if Carney comes in, he will absolutely drag Alberta into economic collapse like he will the rest of Canada. So Alberta will need to either be independent or it will need to join the US. I want this one, by the way. Salut, bonsoir.